They called her crazy for building a floating city. Not a yacht, not a boat, a city. Raelyn Torres was an engineer, a visionary, a misfit who saw what others wouldn't. She bought up abandoned oil platforms, scrounged scrap from shipyards, and welded steel hulls together in a forgotten bay. For 20 years, she poured every coin, every dream, every sleepless night into the project. The world watched, bemused, and sometimes cruel. Raelyn's folly, the news called it. Neighbors shook their heads, investors laughed, politicians dismissed her as a harmless eccentric. But Raelyn kept building. She named her city Pelagos, Greek for open sea. A floating labyrinth of gardens, homes, turbines, greenhouses, desalination tanks, solar fields, and deep water anchors. Her city grew outward, ring by ring, while the world looked on and forgot. Only her few loyal friends and a handful of odd believers joined her. To everyone else, she was the woman who fled the world to chase an impossible dream. But Raelyn had seen the data. Melting glaciers, rising seas, climate models that governments wouldn't publish. She built not out of madness, but out of grim necessity. The first true floods came quietly. Villages vanished in the night. Coastal highways slipped beneath the surf. Storms that should come once in a century now arrived every month, tearing up cities from New Orleans to Lagos. Raelyn watched from the bridge of Pelagos as newsfeeds flickered with images of disaster, then fell silent. The refugees came next. At first, a trickle. Battered rafts, half-sunk fishing boats, desperate faces calling across the radio. Pelagos opened its gates. Raelyn's crew helped survivors aboard, tended wounds, shared food. Rumors spread of a city that floated beyond the storms, a safe harbor on the endless water. People called her an angel, a pirate, a false prophet. She didn't care. She set rules. No weapons, all must work. No one turned away for creed, color, or country. Pelagos became a beacon in the darkness. The world's leaders called for calm, then vanished. Nations fractured along every old fault line. Race, wealth, power, land that no longer existed. Wars erupted over dry ground. Satellites failed. Comms died. Raelyn and her city slipped farther out to sea, hiding amid tempests always moving. Pelagos's population swelled from hundreds to thousands to more. The city creaked and groaned, systems strained. Food was tight, water sometimes rationed. Still, Raelyn built. Vertical farms rising from pontoons, water catchers on every rooftop, energy from wind and wave. Pelagos became not just a city, but a lifeboat for humanity. Raelyn walked the decks every night, listening to the hum of turbines, the laughter, and the fear. She knew what the world had called her, crazy. But when the last newsfeed died, and the old world slipped beneath the waves, only Pelagos remained. And suddenly, everyone wanted in. For months, Pelagos grew. Every raft, every desperate soul that reached their hulls became part of the floating city. Engineers and medics arrived, bringing skills Raelyn harnessed for the city's survival. Farmers transformed empty barges into fields of tomatoes and rice. Artists painted the hulls in colors no storm could erase. But not everyone welcomed the new order. Factions formed, old rivalries, new leaders hungry for power. Some whispered that Pelagos should close its gates, hoard its resources, turn away the endless tide of survivors. Raelyn stood firm. "We rise together or we drown together," she told the council. Her voice was hard as steel, her resolve unbreakable. Dissent simmered, but most followed her. She worked twice as hard, repairing filtration systems, soothing arguments, planning expansion. Yet every night as she walked the perimeter, Raelyn wondered how long unity could last in a world adrift. Trouble came from the horizon. A flotilla of armed ships, pirates, desperate ex-Navy mercenaries spotted Pelagos's lights. They sent warnings, surrender or be boarded. Raelyn ordered blackout, no lights, no radios. The city fell into nervous silence, holding its collective breath as the ships circled in the dark. On the council, some pushed for surrender. "Maybe they'll leave us food. Let us stay if we cooperate." Raelyn refused. "We are not prey." Instead, she gathered engineers, rigged makeshift EMP charges, and deployed underwater drones, her own inventions. When the pirates attempted to breach the hulls, Pelagos fought back. EMP pulses disabled engines, drones cut anchor lines, tangled propellers. A brief, silent battle in the blackness. When dawn broke, the raiders drifted, powerless, into the endless sea. Pelagos survived, shaken but unbroken. Survival demanded adaptation. Raelyn established a security council, trained crews in defense and emergency drills. She promoted leaders from among the newcomers, those who proved themselves with loyalty and skill, not just loud words. Food production increased. Solar and wave energy grids expanded. Children learned to swim before they could walk, to repair a water pump before their ABCs. Pelagos became a true city, a floating mosaic of cultures, languages, hopes, and fears. But the threats never vanished. Storms still battered the hulls, pirates still prowled, supplies ran low in lean seasons. Sometimes late at night, Raelyn wondered if she was leading them to salvation or to a slow, watery grave. But then she would hear laughter echoing over the waves, or see a new garden sprouting on a once-empty deck, and she would remember. This was the last hope the world had. Pelagos drifted beyond the ruins of old nations. Sunken skyscrapers poked through rolling gray waves. Abandoned ships, their flags tattered and meaningless, rusted in silent graveyards. Sometimes survivors hailed Pelagos by radio, sometimes by desperate flares in the night. Raelyn faced hard choices. How many could they safely take? How long before food and water ran out? Her city's heart ached with every no she had to give. The council began keeping records, names, origins, skills, losses. They held quiet ceremonies for those who died, at sea, in childbirth, from fever or despair. Yet life persisted. A teacher began a floating school, painting maps of old continents on cargo doors. Doctors stitched wounds and taught hygiene, preventing outbreaks that could have wiped them all out. Through storms and silence, Pelagos became more than a refuge. It became a home. Trouble brewed from within. A group calling themselves the Mariners demanded more control, claiming their experience at sea entitled them to leadership. They accused Raelyn of favoritism, of risking everyone with her open-door policy. Tension simmered in council meetings, in crowded gardens, in the lines for water. One night, a fire broke out in the north sector. Arson. Food stores were lost, water filters damaged. Raelyn called an emergency assembly. She spoke not as a commander, but as a survivor. We have no room for division. The sea does not care who you were, only who you choose to be now. With the help of respected elders and teachers, she brokered a fragile peace. Representation for every group, strict rules against sabotage, and a new tradition. Every voice heard, every decision voted. Pelagos held together, but Raelyn knew the unity was fragile as glass. The city's greatest test came with the Red Storm, a toxic cyclone spun from burning oil fields sweeping south across the ocean. Raelyn ordered all decks sealed, ventilation intakes shut. For 3 days, the city rocked under red clouds, wind shrieking like banshees. Inside, the population huddled in darkness, rations and hope both running low. When the storm finally passed, Pelagos emerged battered but alive. Many fell ill, but the city's doctors, using every scrap of medicine, saved most. Afterward, something changed in the people. They saw their own resilience, their power to endure. A festival was declared. Colorful lanterns lit across the decks, songs in every tongue. Raelyn, tired but triumphant, joined the celebration. She looked across the sea of faces, refugees, engineers, children born in exile, and for the first time believed, maybe, just maybe, they could survive anything. After the Red Storm, Raelyn realized Pelagos would need more than survival. It would need a future. She established a council of educators, scientists, and elders to plan for the long term. Seed vaults, floating libraries, apprentice programs, even art and music festivals. She encouraged the children, now numbering in the hundreds, to document their lives, to record stories of the drowned world, to dream of rebuilding, not just surviving. Some wanted to search for new land, believing rumors of islands untouched by the flood. Raelyn authorized exploratory boats, always with safety precautions. Most returned empty-handed, but the hope of discovery kept spirits alive. Meanwhile, as years passed, the city grew more complex. Floating clinics, communal kitchens, new greenhouses, and even a floating amphitheater for plays and celebrations. Pelagos became a city not just of survival, but of memory and ambition. Raelyn grew older, her hair shot with silver, her hands stiff from decades at sea. She began training successors, young engineers, medics, organizers, passing on every lesson, every scar. She made them promise. Never forget why Pelagos was built. Never let the gates close to those truly in need. Old enemies became allies, new friendships flourished in hardship. A generation born on water saw Raelyn not as a legend, but as the only leader they had ever known. Still, Raelyn knew she could not lead forever. She spent long nights on the bridge, watching storms gather, the endless swell of water under moonlight, and she wondered what kind of world Pelagos would leave behind. Trouble found them, one last time. A massive vessel, military, half-sunken but still dangerous, drifted close, its captain demanding supplies and refuge at gunpoint. Pelagos's council debated. Some feared war, some wanted to negotiate. Raelyn met the captain on a neutral barge, unarmed. She offered aid but refused to give up her city. The standoff lasted hours. In the end, Raelyn's calm resolve, the readiness of her people, and a sudden storm forced the invaders to retreat, limping back into the endless blue. Pelagos celebrated not with weapons but with music and shared food. The floating city had survived every test: storm, division, scarcity, and invasion. Raelyn knew her work was nearly done, but as she looked into the eyes of the children who would never know solid ground, she felt something new. Not fear, not burden, but hope. Raelyn's health began to fail, though she never admitted it. She moved more slowly across the decks, took more time in her workshop, often found gazing at the open horizon. The council tried to ease her duties, but Raelyn resisted, until the night of the great celebration, when the city marked 20 years afloat. Lanterns drifted over the water, children sang, and elders told stories of the world before. During the final toast, Raelyn stood, her voice carrying across the waves. We were all called crazy for believing in something better. But we're still here. Together, we have become the hope the world once lost. The people cheered. Tears glimmered in eyes both young and old. That night, Raelyn collapsed, overcome by exhaustion and age. Doctors cared for her, the city's elders keeping vigil. For days, Pelagos seemed to hold its breath. Word spread, the founder was dying. People brought small gifts, flowers from the gardens, carvings, letters. Children gathered by the windows of her quarters, singing lullabies she'd taught them. Raelyn drifted in and out of sleep, memories mingling with the present. She remembered storms and laughter, loss and rebuilding, the doubt of the world and the stubborn hope that had kept her alive. At her bedside, the council made her a promise. We will keep Pelagos open. We will build, not just survive. Raelyn smiled, tears streaking her sun-worn face. With a final breath, she looked out at her city, lanterns glowing, waves gently rocking the hulls, generations born of faith and determination. And she was at peace. Raelyn Torres passed away as the sun rose, a single golden line across the endless water. The city mourned. For 3 days, Pelagos was quiet. Even the children played in hushed tones. A floating memorial was held. Wreaths set on the waves, stories shared from every culture that now called the city home. But after mourning came renewal. The council, diverse, determined, united, took up her vision. They opened the city's gates once again, welcoming new survivors with open arms. Children grew up knowing only Pelagos as home. They learned to swim before they could read, to work together before they could walk alone. The memory of Raelyn Torres became a legend, a story told on stormy nights and calm dawns alike. Pelagos endured. It became not just a city, but a symbol, a floating hope in an endless, changing world. Years passed. The children of Pelagos grew into leaders, engineers, storytellers, healers. The city itself evolved. New rings welded from scavenged ships, floating gardens lush with life, desalination plants humming day and night. Where once fear and scarcity ruled, now hope and plenty thrived. Expeditions sometimes returned with news. Other floating towns, scattered isles where green returned, the first birds nesting on abandoned towers. But most who found Pelagos chose to stay, drawn by the spirit Raelyn had left behind. In schools, her words were recited, "We rise together or we drown together." They became more than a motto, they were the city's very soul. A century after its founding, Pelagos was the heart of a new world. Historians chronicled the city's beginnings, of Raelyn Torres, the woman they called mad, and the city that saved the survivors of the flood. Festivals marked her birthday with lanterns set adrift, each one a promise to never close the gates. The floating city had become more than wood and steel. It was a tapestry of cultures, faiths, and stories. Languages mingled on the decks, old recipes reinvented for sea-grown crops. New art adorned every surface, and music echoed over the waves each night. And always, the council remembered the lesson of the founder. Compassion first, survival second. Together, always. Long after the old world faded into memory, a new generation stood at the railings of Pelagos and looked out over calm seas. They did not know war or famine, nor the terror of a world vanishing beneath water. To them, Pelagos was all they had ever known, a city that floated, endured, and embraced all who found its light. In the museum at the city's heart, a simple plaque bore Raelyn's words. "They called me crazy, but we are still here." As the sun set in a golden blaze, children danced on the decks, laughter mingling with the cries of seabirds. Pelagos drifted onward, a living memory, a beacon in the endless blue. And far below, the old world slept, its ruins silent beneath the waves, but above hope sailed on.